Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm once again joined by Brandon Pillar and Ross Levitan of the Locked On Senators podcast, who are you just FYI, congratulations, you're the first three-time recurring guest. So
Let's
it's
go.
such an honor to be. No, I'm kidding. But thanks so much for all your help. I do want to reiterate it, and I think I said it last time, but you guys have really helped me out with this show, and I don't think I'd be here without you guys. So really cool to have you guys on. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. You guys are the biggest Sens podcast out there, and getting the GM, the coach, hopefully maybe the owner one day. That'd be pretty cool too. So I hope you guys are doing well and excited for a really, really fun season.
Yeah, we're gonna have another dad on this week. That's where we're turning our attention now here as we get into the season. It's a father that has a bit of an NHL history himself and isn't scared to make his opinion known, whether his kids' teams are playing well or not.
Oh, I think I know who that is. I was firstly gonna think, is it Shane Pinto's dad? Because I see him on Twitter all the time, but
Be a good get.
yeah. Just first, guys, like I want to jump into first. I was listening to you, Ross, and I want to ask both of you guys just this question. I heard the story of how you got Pierre Dorion on the podcast, and I just want you to talk little bit about that, and then both of you about what's it like for you guys to interview him as well.
Well, Ross does the guest booking, so I'll leave this one to Ross.
Well, no, I think it was just a point where the Sens PR was just like, "Hey, they're not going to stop. Like they're just going."
No, but I heard you bumped into him at a Winnipeg Ice game. That
was, I think. Yeah, you're right. We actually hadn't had him on before that, eh, Pilsy?
Yep, no, that's true.
Yeah, it was a playoff game, so it would have been spring of 2022 where we had Sens prospects in the game for Winnipeg. They traded for Zach Stapchuk and for Carson Latimer as well. So I went to check it out, and I turned over my shoulder, and there's Pierre. So I went up to him, I said hi, and I think we just had Matt Sogard on the day before, so I mentioned something about that, and he's like, "Oh, I'd come on sometime." I was like, "Oh, interesting, because we've actually asked for you before," and he goes, "Oh." Send another message and we'll make it happen. So yeah, I think there's obviously a very wide variety of opinions on Pierre Dorion, the general manager, and I think that a lot of those are very valid with some of the good moves, some of the bad moves. I heard somebody say in the comments for Locked On Senators YouTube the other day, he's basically Babe Ruth. He either hits home runs or strikes out. I can appreciate a guy who goes up to plate looking to clobber one and score runs, but yeah, you can't take anything away from him as a person. I think every interaction I've had with him has been extremely genuine. I think that he gets a bit of a reputation as being goofy. I think that's just him being himself, and I appreciate that. So yeah, I think it's just worked out where yeah, now he's been a 3-time guest on the show, and we're able to sit down with him in person that last time at Dev Camp. So yeah, it's good. We kind of want to always be an arm's length away from the organization. I think that you can get caught up of trying to watch what you say if you get in too close. But it's nice to kind of have a mutual respect for what we do and him helping us out. So yeah, it's been really beneficial to the growth of our show for sure.
Pilsy, like and Ross, you can chime in as well. But like, how do you stay an arm's length away while having not just the coach, but like players and coaches and just how do you kind of navigate that, because you guys are fans, you're not necessarily like journalists at the same time, but like how do you manage that for your show?
Well, one, I'll say, and Pilsy, I'll throw you on this, DJ Smith definitely doesn't remember coming on our show.
Yeah, that's totally okay. I'm sure he does a lot of media.
Well, no, it was also like right after practice. Like typically it's like, an off day or whatever, and we'll send a link, and like they're at their home, they're in a little more of like a comfortable setting for them. DJ was still wearing his tracksuit, like sweating coming off the ice. Like it was just different. It was in training camp, but it's just like we've learned our lesson. The best time to have coaches on is in the summer when they're actually like decompressed.
Yeah, because otherwise, like a coach is stressed. Like he's doing that interview with us, but he's thinking about something after that he's got to talk with the assistants and things like that. Alex, to answer your question though, our main focus is to be a fan forward podcast. We affectionately call ourselves the People's Pod, for fans, by fans, whatever slogan you want to throw in here. That's our whole ideology. Because look, if we wanted to cover this as members of the media, it just wouldn't have that same vibe, wouldn't have that same flavor. Nothing Ross and I do is really scripted. We barely do any preparation for shows anymore. We just kind of hit record and let it fly. And if you become too close to the team, then you're second guessing everything you're saying. You're trying to make sure that you're not burning any bridges. You're being too positive. You're not really covering the team from a way that fans expect you to. And Ottawa Senators fans are some of the most passionate fans in the league, and they know who the real ones are and who's just kind of carrying water for the team and things like that, right? So you can't get put in a spot like that. But at the same time, you know, you want to have a good relationship with the team. That's how you get access to players, and that's how you have interviews. You don't want to just be crapping on the team all the time. I mean, we covered this team. We did episode 886 today. No playoff games.
I was going to say.
And we've had to navigate through those kind of tough rebuilding years where they're losing a whole lot more games than they're winning. So it's been kind of the ebbs and flows of covering a team like that has made it interesting to have a relationship with the team, but also not be directly tied to them.
And when we say like not being negative, I feel like sometimes we get a bit of a reputation of being a little overly optimistic, but I think that goes back to being a fan. You always want the best for your team. It's more delusion than anything. Like we're not hyping them up because they want to be hyped up. We're hyping ourselves up because we genuinely believe this is the year. And like, we're just genuine fans at the end of the day. So I think that sometimes comes off as us like, you know, excusing different potential mistakes. That every team makes mistakes, of course, throughout the time, but where we kind of like, you know, shrug off the losses and, you know, hold the trophy up every little victory. But I also think that that's kind of going to change this season. I've already been a little more openly critical. I think that there's a point in every rebuild that it's been 7 years. It's time to, you know, either make a ginormous change in terms of who makes the decisions, or it has to come to fruition that what you've been building can be lived in and sustained and have victories to go. This was the first time the Senators had ever been over 500 that we covered them. And if you add the overtime losses, they weren't. So it's kind of, you know, a step in the right direction. And I think that's where some of the optimism comes from, genuine optimism. But there's also a part of us as fans where it's like, you know, we want the best for the team versus the individuals involved. So I think that's where the standpoint we come from is, if you come on the show, we're going to, you know, be a little biased towards you. That's just kind of, you know, nature of knowing people and understanding them as people as much as assets or players or whatnot. But I think at the end of the day, those people are also fans of different sports and different leagues. So everyone kind of understands the fan mindset if you're in professional sports. And I think that the players, if we're hard on them, they know it's not that we want to see them fail. Them succeeding in Ottawa does better for us at the end of the day too. So it's kind of that balance there. And I think there's that mutual understanding where we want the best for the team because then everybody is happy when the team's winning.
What would you say your favorite interview or relationship has been like throughout like your, what is it, like you started in 2017 or I think Sean was 2019, but like just your whole journey, what would you say, like individually, or if you both have thought about this and have a collective answer, what's kind of been like the most impressionable memory for you both?
Well, we started this podcast 3 months after we met, and then Pilsy was one of my groomsmen at my wedding. So I'd be remiss not to say that us being able to do this every day and coordinating schedules and understanding when, you know, when Pilsy has an early morning at the farm and I'm an hour earlier here, like, I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and do it. Or, you know, him understanding that my schedule is a bit all over the place week to week. And man, I don't know if we'd be able to do this, Pilsy, without Apple calendars automatically doing the 1 hour time change for us, or else we'd be lost in that time zone like you wouldn't believe. But I think that's obviously the most impressive thing is us being able to, like, we don't even take like days off, let alone like weeks. Like, you know, even like a radio show, it's like, oh, filling in for this person today. It's like, no, we don't have fill-ins. Like, we do this every day. And I think that commitment to me is like the biggest thing that I've taken away from the whole experience that we feel is still just getting going.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you're talking more players and member of the media, Alex, but like kind of what Ross is saying, like, again, like our our relationship with Elias Martian. Like that's a guy we met online, just a Sens fan that kind of vibed with us, and we end up building a relationship, and now we're helping each other out with all our content creation, and that's been a really fun thing to kind of build on. And Martian was at Ross's wedding as well. We're all really good friends now, and we kind of become a little trio here. So it's just things like that where we're Sens fans used to, well, Ross grew up in Ottawa, but I grew up outside of Ottawa. So I'm used to Habs fans, Bruins fans, Leafs fans, obviously picking on me and me feeling like, well, there's no other Sens fans here. I'm all on my own. So the biggest thing has been being able to band together and seeing the community that's here that just needed a platform, just needed a spot or some way to come together and kind of celebrate what it is being an Ottawa Senators fan, the trials and tribulations of it, and the nostalgia of it all. So I think that's been a big thing for us is building those relationships and trying to get the community together so that Sens fans can be proud and passionate, and just overall, we're just trying to have a good time. So that's been a fun part of building these relationships.
As Sens fans, what do you make of new ownership? Like, I mean, very contentious relationship with the previous owner, but now it seems as though Michael Andlauer wants to spend money, seems to really understand the fan base. I really haven't heard one fan that seems to be upset at Andlauer, at least right now. We'll see when the season starts and they start maybe going on a losing streak, but what have you made just your initial thoughts of him coming into the organization and just for the fan base as well?
I mean, it feels good. It's a breath of fresh air. Like you just get that sense of professionalism, experience. I just feel like Sens fans are going to get some stability, and that's something that this fan base hasn't had a lot. Look, there's been some great ups in this organization, but there's been some pretty low lows as well. And the up and down and the wild press conferences and just kind of being looked at as a bit of a laughing stock by other fans and organizations around the years. It gets tiring after a while. It's a tired thing to have to deal with. And now you've got a guy in Michael Andlauer who has pedigree. He's got goals. He's won multiple championships with his Hamilton Bulldogs. Steve Stais was a part of that as well. He's been a minority owner with the Montreal Canadiens, so he understands and is respected in kind of the world of NHL ownership. And it just seems like his press conference that he was saying all the right things. He wants the new arena to be focused on the fans. He wants to build a contending team on the ice. He wants to be an employee, player first type of owner. And these are the things that Ottawa Senators fans needed to hear, because honestly, I think above all, the fans crave stability. That's like, we just need some consistency here and some stability, and a guy who you can see steering this ship, and it feels like he's going to have success here, and it feels good to have Michael Andlauer as the new owner.
Yeah, I just echo everything Pilsy said, basically. Like, it's just a matter of having somebody who, hasn't burned any bridges yet. And I mean, if you ask people in 2004 about Eugene Melnyk, they'd probably say the same thing. So I'm excited to see this play out, but certainly there's such a level of optimism. The one thing I'll echo or add to what Pilsy was saying is I really hope, and I think this is a priority, is seeing the alumni get more involved and just being able to connect a thread through the past, present, and to the future of the organization is a huge thing. And I'm hoping to see more of that going forward.
Are you ready for Alfredson to be unveiled as like some part of the organization? Because
that's going to be this Friday. It's going to be Andlauer's a Friday news announcer type guy, which under the old regime, that was kind of like, okay, we got terrible news here. Let's hide it under the rug Friday afternoon when all the media members are going on their weekend and people aren't concerned about it anymore. Whereas now it's more like, hey, Friday's here. What big news can we celebrate?
It would also be nice if Shane Pinto were to be signed. I want to ask you guys about that, and just maybe we're talking off air just about Pierre Dorion in the summer, and he's caught between a rock and a hard place on Shane Pinto. I think they have $120,000 in cap space. Obviously, news last night about Sokolov and JBD, friend of your show, and Igor, the Shark. But what do you think kind of plays out here, and what would you do if you're Pierre Dorion to get the cap space to sign Shane Pinto?
This is a new world for us. We don't really get the cap that much. We've been working
Yeah.
on how you get to the floor over the last number of years on the show. So for us, it's really kind of a learning process to know what these different cap manipulations you can do to fit guys under. So I guess as we're recording right now, the future of Jacob Bernard Docker is unknown. He signed that one-way ticket. So that I believe means that his contract would be buried in the AHL if he does get claimed, which would clear up a little bit of space. But yeah, I think Elliot Friedman reported the other day it's not so much a matter of fitting him in under the cap as it is agreeing to terms on a contract. So that has to be the first step. You can be over the cap in preseason. Other teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs need to find ways to shed salary as well. So it's a competitive market from that perspective, which means it's great to be a buyer of cap, where if you have a team like Arizona or whatever that has that, you have a bit of an advantage right now. So who's going to blink first is really the question between Shane Pinto and the Ottawa Senators. But with the question marks around Josh Norris's health, Shane Pinto becomes even that much more critical of a part of the future. So this is a huge storyline to watch play out, both the health of Josh Norris and the status of Shane Pinto.
What do you think? Like, how would you grade Pierre Dorion? Like, you had the funny thing that we talked about just before we started about the Babe Ruth analogy with Pierre Dorion. How would you kind of assess his time in Ottawa? Because I mean, he could come back, but it feels as though this might be his one last year to kind of take a big crack and get the Sens into the playoffs.
I mean, this is a big year for Pierre Dorion. I think it's widely regarded. This year will determine his future in the Ottawa Senators organization, and honestly beyond. To reference Elliot Friedman again, he said Pierre Dorion this season is going to be his resume. If he doesn't continue with the Ottawa Senators, he can say, look, this is what I built, this is what I can do for your franchise. And anyone can tear a team down. Anyone can take star players and trade them for draft picks and get prospects and gather all that together. Anyone can do that. That's the easy part. How can you take everything you've gathered from tearing this Senators team apart for the last 5 years? And how can you build and put that all together to make it worthwhile and to make all that pain and suffering worth it? And how can you fit everything under the cap and properly build a roster that's set up for success? That's where the question comes for Pierre Dorion, because he's had no issues making those trades, and like he's hit some massive, like Tim Stutzle, that's not a home run, that's a grand slam. That Erik Karlsson trade was a grand slam for Pierre Dorion. But now you look at some questionable things like buying Michael Del Zotto out to save $500,000, bringing in Tarasenko for 1 year, $5 million, when you're trying to get Shane Pinto signed still. There's so many things that he's really kind of taken risks on that are coming back to bite him, and he's going to have to figure out how he's going to get himself out of this mess. So it's an interesting time for Pierre Dorion, that's for sure. And I think this year is going to be a massive, massive year as far as it goes for his career.
What do you like? Like, what are the chances of this team to make the playoffs? Like, I know last year they talked about, what was the quote was like, we want to be in meaningful games. Yeah. They haven't said the playoffs is the goal, but I think that it's so clear cut. But what does this team need to improve upon if they are going to make the playoffs? And is it just internal growth? Is it just a healthy Josh Norris? I mean, it might be a combination of it all, but what do you think is the most important thing for this team to kind of get good at and play well in terms of making the playoffs next year? Or this year?
They have to make the playoffs this year. Ross and I on Locked On Senators, our slogan is playoffs or bust, no excuses, and there can't be any excuses. And I think the number one thing, look, I could come on and talk about health and injury problems, but that's all hypothetical. Who knows what's going to happen? There's not really any way to predict that one way or another. So, using health, that's an excuse. There can't be an excuse. So I'm not going to go that direction, Alex. What I'm going to go with is this team has to get off to a hot start. They cannot have a situation where it's November and they're at the bottom of the league and they're saying, well, how do we get rid of pieces so we can recoup some assets because this year's already finished? They can't have that. They need to have a hot start. And more importantly, the month of November has been a killer for the Ottawa Senators in the last couple of years, particularly under DJ Smith. So what they have to do is they have to come out of October and November being at the very least, bare minimum at 500. Like, you got to be better than 500. They need to be in a position where they're still in the hunt. And especially, you look at the Atlantic Division, this is a tough division, but the Florida Panthers, they've got big injuries on the back end. You look at Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour out. That's arguably their top two defensemen. So you need to beat those teams early. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning just announced Vasilevsky will be out for, I believe it's like 8 to 10 weeks. So you need to jump on top of them while you can as well to get those legs up on those division teams. So this start and beating division rivals is going to be the focus and the recipe for success, in my opinion.
2 times the Senators host in Ottawa the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first 10 games. Those are as must win as they can be for that early in the year.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I wrote an article about the Sens potentially being better than the Leafs this year. Do you think I'm taking crazy pills? Is that possible? Because I look at that team and their decor. I do not like the Leafs decor this year. Their forward group's still pretty good. Their goaltending is, good, but I don't know if the Sens arguably have better tandem. Just could the Sens finish above the Leafs this year? Like, how likely is that?
I think it's unlikely, if not highly unlikely, but I'm starting to take my own crazy pills, Alex, and I'm starting to think that Ottawa could challenge for a top 3 spot in the division. I really think the Tampa Bay Lightning, that injury to Vasilevsky cannot be overstated how critical he is for their success. So when you put those all together, I think that's now the team I'm staring at. We know Boston's going to regress, but I always tell people, they're like, oh, Boston's not going to make the playoffs. Like, they literally still have the coach of the year, the goalie of the year, a 60 goal scorer on offense, and Charlie McAvoy, who's the number 1 defenseman on any team in the league. And Hampus Lindholm might be the most underrated defenseman in the league. He's legitimately a top 20 defenseman in the entire NHL. So I still think they're a playoff team. You can say what they want down the middle. They're so good.
I'll say this when it comes to Leafs Sens. The Leafs may have a better regular season, and congrats to the Leafs. They're very good at having good regular season records. Sweet. But you get these 2 teams in a round 1 matchup, and
please,
I'm liking the Senators' chances. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, same.
With that, I've listened to you guys for a couple years now, and it's always been about going into the season, who's going to play with Thomas Chabot, who's the top 4 defenseman, and they finally have that answer. They got Jacob Chychrun, Jake Sanderson. Like, really looks good in preseason. I really like that he's been kind of showing more an offensive flair early on. But what do you make of this decor? Is this like one of the better decors in the league? And I'll put you on the spot as well. Who will be the best defenseman on the Sens by the end of the year?
I'll start with the last question, Alex. The best defenseman on this team is Jake Sanderson. I don't think it's necessarily close either. I think he's that good, that talented, never gets tired, never makes mistakes, never takes penalties. And then if you add an element more of offense beyond the 30 points that he was able to get in his rookie year, like, this guy, he's unbelievable.
Do you think he could get a Norris one day? That's maybe where again, crazy pills, but do you think that's something that he could be in contention for down the road?
I think saying in contention for is the way to go, Alex. I wouldn't be able to be out here making that type of statement when the NHL still has Rasmus Dahlin, Miro Heiskanen, who are all funnies, Quinn Hughes, like those guys. I would say are all like
Adam Fox,
well beyond where Jake Sanderson is now, but they also have a lot more experience. So I think he can be in the contention with them, and that's really a huge compliment. So I take him first, and then I'll go so far as saying Jacob Chychrun is my number 2. Man, that guy is unreal. The more you watch him, the better he looks. He's just so sturdy defensively, and that active stick, like, it's kind of a cliche in hockey, but every time the rush comes down, it feels like he's getting a one-hand whip and breaking up plays. It's really an impressive talent that he's mastered.
With that, I want to go to Tim Stutzle because he's just like so fun to watch. Like, just how dynamic he is, and he has that kind of he has what Brad Treliving said. He has a lot of snot to his game that not a lot of Leafs seem to have. But how likely do you think it is that he can be close to 100 points this year? And do you think at the end of the day he might be the best Sen of all time?
I mean, best Sen of all time, that's pretty big when you look at Daniel Alfredsson, you look at Erik Karlsson, obviously, but it's early, so it's tough to say, but I don't think it's that crazy. Like, he just hit 90 points last year and he played 78 games. So an extra 4 games, you can mix in a couple more points there. And then the way, and it looks like this will be the top line, the way Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stutzle, and Claude Giroux played together in the latter half of that season when they were aligned together was incredible. And I don't see Claude Giroux slowing down just yet. Brady Tkachuk has a lot to prove. This is a big season for him as a captain. So I honestly think Tim Stutzle can get 100 points this season, and the sky's the limit for him. He's so motivated. He's got that new contract now. He doesn't have to worry about anything like that. He can just focus on hockey. He's one of the most driven guys I've ever seen. He's so competitive. So Timmy Superstar is just scratching the surface, and that's saying something.
The number to watch for this year for me is 106, which would be one more than Danny Heatley had in 06-07. It would be the franchise record for most points in a season. I'm not saying that he's going to get there this year, but I'm sure Tim Stutzle has taken a look at quanthockey.com before and checked out what the single season records are for the Sens. Maybe he hasn't. He probably looks at which wins team had the most, because he really does always deflect to the team, which any fan would love to hear. But as a true superstar, as competitive as he is, that's got to be a goal of his, is to set the franchise mark. And I think he can do it. He's that skilled.
Maybe he's just looking at Leon and saying, I don't want to get the German record. Maybe he needs to get to 140 or something.
I mean, 90 points, that's 6th all time. Like, there's only 5 seasons better than what Tim Stutzle did at 20 years old. That was counting as his 20-year-old season, since he started at that age on Quant Hockey. So the only other 20-year-old that's even close on this list is Alexei Yashin's rookie year when he had 79. So like that's just how talented this kid is. And man, we're just seeing him getting going, right? Like, Erik Karlsson to put it in comparison, Erik Karlsson's first Norris season, he was 22. So he was a year older already. And it just shows, like, the trajectory this kid's on is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, for sure. He puts bums in seats. And I mean, it looks like the Sens fans have been selling out many more games than prior years. But I think Timmy's last season is probably pretty big reason for that. For you guys, you guys cover the team day in, day out. Who's maybe jumped out in preseason for you guys that's maybe more kind of underrated or not like a star name?
I'll go with Yuri Shmekal. He's been really impressive. This is a guy, European, 26 years old, coming over trying to make his claim in the NHL. And he had a bunch of options of places he could go, and he chose Ottawa. And look, with things looking like you need a boost in offense in your bottom 6, certainly last season, there wasn't much offense in that bottom 6. This is a guy that could come in and play certainly on the 4th line, but maybe even spend some time on that 3rd line. And I think he could do well, because the thing I like about him is he's got size, he's got vision, and he's got a nice shot. So he's been really impressive to me so far in this preseason, Alex. And I would say, as far as looking at battles and battling for a bottom 6 winger job, he's been one of the most impressive newcomers so far.
I love that answer, Pilsy. I would have taken it if you didn't. So I'll give 2, because one, I just want to give a quick stick tap to Joonas Korpisalo. Like, he's not an underrated guy, but he's a huge piece of importance for the Sens going forward. So for him to get that 40 save shutout in Halifax, I think that's a huge step in the right direction for him, and Anton Forsberg for coming back from his gruesome double MCL tears. To have 2 great starts, albeit in preseason. I know asterisks. Those should be kind of, looked upon under a bright light. That said, Roby Järventie playing center and not dominating, but playing well enough that I think that he and Ridley Gregg right now, it should be a toss-up between if there is a placeholder for Shane Pinto and it's one of those 2 guys. Like, to me, it's a toss-up. Before the season, I would have said Ridley Gregg. No point in even having a competition. Just give it to him. But Järventie's come in here and really shown some improvements in all aspects of his game, especially defensively, and his willingness to move his feet when he doesn't have the puck on his stick. So I think Roby Järventie has done a lot for his future in this training camp.
What do you make of the Tarasenko signing, and also just how what do you make of his preseason so far? I see a lot of people on Twitter seem to be really down on him. I feel a bit more, maybe am kind of indifferent to that. I feel he hasn't been great, hasn't been terrible, but what do you guys make of the signing and just how he's played so far?
Yeah, I have one rule I live by, guys. I do not judge veterans play in preseason harshly. Like I'll like give a shout out to it if they play well, like Jacob Chychrun in Toronto when he had those 2 goals. But if you don't play well in the preseason, and if you have 6 30-goal seasons under your belt in the NHL, I'm not too worried about how you're lining up against, who was it? Like, these 6-pair defensemen of the Winnipeg Jets, or, in Pittsburgh, I guess last night they were dressing a more NHL ready group. But the signing in general now, like I always said, I liked it. I love the idea that, bona fide NHL stars, albeit maybe on the back 9, hopefully on the 13th hole, not the 18th, in their career, are choosing to play in Ottawa. I just wish the Sens would have budgeted for Shane Pinto and taken care of their internal business before going out. And that's kind of like, it's not to the same extent, obviously, as Toronto with John Tavares, but it is in the sense that it's a luxury purchase. They already were set down the middle. They went out and got it. Ottawa, you take care of your own first and then spend around that. That's my only kind of qualm with it. But overall, to attract a player like that to round out the top 6 is a solid move. And I'm excited to see what he looks like in November, because I care about that a lot more than I do about how he looks in September.
Yeah, especially for a guy like Tarasenko who makes his living off scoring goals. Like, it's a new team. He's trying to figure out chemistry. He's not all the way ramped up yet. I think Tarasenko is going to be just fine. And although it might come at the cost of some tense times with negotiating with Shane Pinto, I still am in favor of that signing.
If Norris is healthy and Pinto gets signed, and barring a Matthew Joseph trade or something like that, let's just presume in a perfect world there's no significant roster move out for the Sens. Who's your second and third line kind of lines for you guys? Like, it does seem as though it's probably going to be Tkachuk, Stutzle, and Giroux, just because of how well they've looked like last night, and then just in general from last year, the carryover. But for you guys, who would be maybe the second and third lines?
Well, first, let me ask you this, Alex. Would your first line, if you were the coach, be Stutzle, Tkachuk, and Giroux?
I want to know what Norris looks like. I really feel like that's, but if he looks a bit maybe up, a stride off or something like that, I'd maybe put Giroux on that second line and take faceoffs. As I think you guys talked about it, but just you do not want Josh Norris taking faceoffs. I think that's my card.
I do. He doesn't.
Yeah, Ross and I
you guys were talking about it. Yeah,
we have this divide here, and look, I would rather have an 80% Josh Norris not taking faceoffs, still scoring 30 goals, rather than have Josh Norris trying to take faceoffs, getting injured at any second, and he misses most, if not all, the season. That's where I stand.
I also, just to chime in, I also think if he came into camp and there was no he got tweaked and tweaked his shoulder, isn't playing, then I'd feel a bit different. But the fact that he's still leaning on that shoulder, then that feels like it changes how I see it, because it's clearly still a problem than if he came out after the 8 months and we're good to go and presuming everything's fine. So but I do think that's going to be interesting for this team, is just how they navigate that. But also Tarasenko, there's a world where he's on the third line, and that probably doesn't make sense for him. Does he play on his off wing? Does he play left wing? They do have some interesting options and decisions for DJ Smith.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that top line be Tkachuk, Stutzle, Giroux, regardless of what happens with Norris and Pinto. It just seems like that's the best line. It'd be kind of silly to break them up. So I get that. And then for what it looks like so far in the preseason, Tarasenko has played the left side exclusively. So he's going to be on that left side. Batherson's going to be the right side. And then I think Kubalik and Joseph are going to be the wingers on the third line. So we can't really answer the question of who's going to be down the middle with all this uncertainty, unfortunately.
Do you feel like, to go to the defense, do you like the pairing of Shabbat and Chikrin, and then vice versa with Sanderson and Zubas, that making out the top four? Like, does that make sense to you? And do you like a left shot defenseman playing on their wrong side, especially in Shabbat?
Yeah, I'll let Pilsy get into that last part. I just say don't touch the top four. I think you can alternate of who's playing the left and right side, but like, to me, that's the way it should be. Honestly, I think that Chikrin's kind of a perfect balance, where even though he's an offensive defenseman, he has the booming shot. I really do feel like when you have Chikrin there, as he's also a stabilizer defensively, and Shabbat needs that.
Yeah, I agree. You keep the top four as is. Look, it's preseason, so maybe this is just an experiment, but I'm not a fan of Thomas Chabot on the right side. He's played the left side as far as I've ever seen. I think he's better playing the left side. He's going to be the guy transitioning the puck up the ice more often than not on that pair of Chabot Chikrin. I just think Chabot on the left side, Chikrin on the right side makes more sense, especially Chikrin as the shooter. Get him on his offside so he can use that one timer a little bit more often if he gets the opportunity for that. So I'm not too concerned one way or another, but I would prefer to have Chabot left, Chikrin right.
So before I let you guys go, and I really appreciate you giving me the time, I have some fun over unders for you, and then we'll go into the kind of playoff prediction, and just in terms of who's in, who's out, and everything like that. So the first one is, and I've tried to make it so it's really like a good over under. It's tough. Brady Tkachuk 40 goals. Do you take the over or do you take the under? He had 35 last year.
If you're taking the over, I would recommend you sprint. Don't run over to FanDuel, because right now, if you have 40 plus goals for Brady Tkachuk, is paying 480 plus 480 for that. So you can go over there, put in 10, make $48 just off of that. Now, I think that's a fair number to have it at, but I'm going to take a slight under on that. Unfortunately, I think it would be great to see, but if the captain is anything over 30, the way that he plays and his underrating playmaking skills, I think that the points might be a little bit higher. I think that a fun one for him too is 90 points. Whereas I think that if he could get even a couple extra assists this year, and maybe a couple, like, he's always going to be around the net. So maybe the goals is the play, but I think that 90 points is kind of what I have earmarked for him, but like 36 to 38 goals.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got him in the 32 to 38 goal category here. So I'm going to take the under on that.
Okay. Well, we already talked about Tim Stutzle 100 points. I feel we got that, but
over.
Yeah.
Let's
over.
do it.
Okay. Over. Okay.
I've been conservative on that, but I'm coming around.
So
and if they keep, if they keep that line together, Timmy's getting 100. So let's smash the over on that one, Alex.
Now this one's I think's tough. And this is again with a player that has had a bit of injury, unluck, I guess, or not been lucky with injuries. But Jacob Chikrin, 15 goals, over or under?
This is funny because, Ross, we did our projections for goals on the back end, and I had Chikrin at 15 goals. Everything as far as points go for defensemen, it all comes down to who's going to play that top power play. Everything comes down to that. Whoever is the defenseman on the top power play, I believe, will have the most points.
Can I follow up for both of you for the power play just quickly? Like, what is your starting your first unit, and like who's playing on the first unit of the power play?
Let's dive into that. First, I'll tell you, I'm going to go with a slight under, because as you mentioned, health is such a feature. Only 9 defensemen in the NHL last year had 15 or more goals. And the list is like super impressive. Erik Karlsson had 25, which is ridiculous. Dougie Hamilton had 22. Brady Shea and Roman Josi and Brent Burns all had 18. Cale Makar had 17. Brandon Montour, Josh Morrissey had 16, and Rasmus Dahlin had 15. So like, that's elite company there. So again, the power play is going to have a lot to do with it. But I'm going to say slight under. I'm going to go 13 or 14. But if he plays all 82 games, the last time he played a full season was the COVID shortened year, 56 games, and he led all defensemen in the NHL in goals. So he does have a reputation for that. Pilsy, who's your top power play unit?
I mean, obviously Tim Stutzle is on there. Obviously Brady Tkachuk is on there. And apart from, Other than those two guys, I'm kind of okay with any mix, like any mix of Giroux, Norris, Tarasenko, Sanderson, Shabbat, Chikrin, like Batherson. Yeah, like as long as those two guys are on the top unit, there's so much talent around them. I'm not too concerned because you could put like this team's gonna have a power play 1A and a power play 1B. Like it's not gonna be one unit that goes out there for a minute and a half, and then the second unit just comes out and hopes to get a cookie or two if they have the opportunity.
Do you want to add to that, Ross?
No, I was just going to say I like Batherson kind of floating in the high slot and being able to kind of be a bit of a rover out there. So I'd probably have Batherson as a lock on my top unit.
Any chance that there's two defensemen on the first unit? I feel like that's probably unlikely.
Two defensemen are going to be on the second unit. That I'm pretty sure of.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will transition as best I can. Jake Sanderson, 40 points. Over under.
I'm going over.
I like the setting on that though. Yeah, it's between 38 and 42 for me. So
yeah, I'll go over. Yeah, because I think eventually it might not start out this way, but I think eventually Jake Sanderson will be the quarterback of that first power play unit.
Yeah.
Okay. Drake Batherson, 65 points. Over or under?
Over.
I think if he's healthy, he's getting 80. I think that
he's gonna have a huge year.
Huge year. Yeah, he's back. Like think of how well he was playing before the high ankle sprain. I think he's going to be that and more this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Vladimir Tarasenko, 25 goals.
Over. Oh yeah, this guy's he scored 30 goals 6 times as an NHLer. I think if again, I hate to say it, but health permitting, because he did have some injuries last season. Health permitting, this guy's going to light it up. I'm going over.
Yeah, over for me as well. Just probably a goal or two over, though. I don't think he's going to be sniffing 35 or anything. But yeah, I think 32 to 34 is probably the range I have him in. But I also could see him scoring 21 if we're going to go the other end of it. I think we're gonna know in the first few weeks of the season what we're getting.
That's fair.
Which Sens goalie do you think has more wins at the end of the year?
Great question. I'll go with Joonas Korpisalo.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Korpisalo, not because I don't believe in Forsberg, just new contract. This is a big year for him, and he's looked really good so far, or at least in that the previous game up against Pittsburgh, he looked really good. And I'm becoming a Korpisalo believer. I'm coming around here.
Goalie friendly show. But how do you guys to follow up on that? How do you guys think the Sens will go in play those two guys? Like, is it very close to 50-50? Is Korpisalo more like 60-40? Is it, I mean, I doubt Forsberg has the edge, at least just with the contract and everything, but how do you think DJ Smith goes about that?
I don't think either start 50. So no. somewhere below that.
Okay. Do you have a hedge on who, like, is it Korpisalo or?
Whoever plays
I think it's going to be Korpisalo.
Whoever plays more is going to be the one who's playing better. So I'll be happy as long as that's kind of the thread that they do, as long as it's not unearned or injuries. Like last year, it was like Forsberg started like 10 of the first 12 games. It felt like he was, in there every night, and you just don't want these guys to get tired early on. So I hope it's pretty even split early, and then throughout the second half of the season, ride the hot hand as much as you can.
Yeah.
Thomas Chabot, 50 points.
Oh, he has to. And I think that he fell just short of that last year, right?
He did.
He missed a lot of games. He had 41.
Yeah. I think he'll barely make it over. He
has to.
Yeah. No. And so I remember we talked about this last year on Claude Giroux's road to 1,000 points, but he still looks really good in preseason. That's one thing for sure. Does he get to 70 points again? Do you think that's still possible?
Yeah, I think he can get to 80 points. Like he's not going anywhere. Like I look at Joe Pavelski's career stat line, and that's kind of how I see Claude aging. Both them similar in terms of, being a longtime captain in one place and then moving on to second phase of their career, and then playing with young players that have kind of made, well, at least in Pavelski's case, like made him young again with playing with Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson. And I just see Giroux is going to score 80 points for the next 4 or 5 years. Like I don't know how he's going to slow down, because it's not, his game isn't predicated on speed. It's predicated on thinking 5 steps ahead of the opposition. So, and he's going to score at least 10 more goals doing that. He tried it in Pittsburgh or against Pittsburgh the other night, doing that little flip shot from the neutral zone where he tries to get a one-off.
Yeah.
like against
The one
Vegas.
you got against Vegas.
Hilarious, man. He's so funny and he's such a huge part of the team. Yeah, 80 points is where I got Giroux this year.
Nice. Yeah, I'm hitting that over as well.
Okay. Well, again, thanks so much. I want to ask you guys what's your prediction for the team? Not only just do they make the playoffs, where they maybe rank in the division and or like wild card in terms of if they are to make the playoffs. Like what, Brandon, what do you think? Where do the Sens land at the end of this season?
I've kind of staked my claim in they are going to make the playoffs. I'm pretty confident in that. I think they're going to be a wild card team. Whether they're the top or bottom wild card team remains to be seen, but I don't care. They could look at Florida. They were the last team to make the playoffs and they make a run all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. So just get into the playoffs. And my goal is that whoever their round one opponent is, they make it really hard on them. Like they don't get swept. It's not a gentleman's sweep. They're going 6 or 7 games, but not unconvincingly. Like they're making it really tough on them. I'm not sure if they can win a playoff round yet, just because a lot of these players, Brady, Timmy, Thomas Chabot, a lot of these, Jake Sanderson, a lot of these guys don't have playoff experience. So I think that's a good goal to set for this year, is a real competitive round one.
As a wild card team, is that?
As a wild card team, yeah. Ross, how about you?
I think I said earlier in this conversation, I'm convincing myself they can be a second or third place team in the Atlantic Division. I think Toronto's way ahead of them in terms of establishing themselves as a regular season contender. So I have the Leafs winning the division, with Ottawa finishing probably third behind Boston is my guess, but I think that they can be right there with the Bruins. And then I've got Tampa fighting for that wild card spot with Buffalo. Buffalo could also be a team that finishes in the top 3 as well. I think they're going to take a step forward. I just really struggled thinking a 21-year-old, no matter how talented Devin Levi is, that he can play 50, 60 games and be that number one every single night in the NHL. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but especially coming from college, he's ever played in a season is 35 games. Now he's going to play 60. All right. Power to him if he can do it, but I have my doubts. That said, the Atlantic's going to be a dogfight. The wild card's going to be a dogfight, and I can't wait to get this season underway.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so what are you guys going to do for the first round when the Leafs play the Sens? What are you guys going to do? Or just even if the Sens make the playoffs, like what's Locked On Senators and you guys going to do? Is it just like a huge party at the Glebe Central pub and then?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Alex, I've never been to an NHL playoff game, let alone an Ottawa Senators playoff game. So whichever game is their first home game, I can guarantee you I will be there.
And first game. Pillsy, we're going to the first playoff game in podcast history. We have to be.
That's true. Yeah, even if it's a road game. Yeah.
Definitely. Like, there's paternity leave, there's maternity leave. Like, I'm gonna
even
have
if it's a road game.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to go to bosses and ask for Sens ternity leave. Like, hey, it's playoffs. I need to be understanding here. I need a couple weeks. I need anything between a week and a half to 2 months off. Hope you understand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's why.
If they close out series early, maybe I come back for a few days in between.
I just want you guys to get meth or someone to get you into the Leafs barn for that series. That'd be.
Oh no! If they play the Leafs in round one, we're going.
Yeah, I mean, we may have to make some financial moves to afford those tickets, but we're gonna get there.
There you go. I want to just give you guys the floor. Anything you want to plug for your podcast? Everyone should check out Locked On Senators, and just I know I'm unsure what I'm doing for the home opener. I will be there in some capacity, either as media or as a fan. But what do you guys have up your sleeve for?
No, don't make me do this, Ross. You're the plug god. Buddy.
This is my flu game today. It's all you. I want to hear it.
All right, guys. I am an expert social media content creator and promoter. So here we go. You can check us out, the Locked On Senators podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Sens Central, on Instagram at lockedon.senators. Nailed that. You can listen to our show 5 days a week. We're going to be doing the postcast.
Awesome.
If you guys are in the Ottawa area, check out the Glebe Central Pub website. They're doing the Sens shuttle bus again. You're going to want to get on top of that. And We've got some big guests coming up to start the season off. Before the season kicks off, Ross and I like to do kind of a lineup of Sens guests. So keep your eyes peeled for some big Sens guests we're going to have leading up to the start of the regular season here.
Ross, do you want to add anything to that? Or
Pilsy nailed it. Can't beat perfection.
Nice.
That's great, guys. Well, thank you so much for kind of coming on the show. I really do appreciate it, and I'm excited to check out all the big guests. I'm sure Mark Mathod is not one of them, so that's unfortunate. But overall, obviously kidding. I just really excited to kind of watch and listen along to you guys throughout the year, and we need that playoffs as a diehard Sens fan. We just need you guys at a playoff game too, and I definitely would love to watch you guys like the traveling circus everywhere to all the playoff games. So thanks again, guys, and I really appreciate it.
Is there a way that we can get a live stream rolling for a week and a half? That we'll be thinking up plans all year long about what to do if we can get this team into the playoffs, because it'll feel like the biggest breath of fresh air. Like it's been way too long. And Alex, we appreciate what you're doing here. It's been awesome to follow the growth of your show, and we're happy to join you anytime. So thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks.
I will just say I need you guys to come straight onto my podcast for a postcast when the Sens win the cup. Immediately after that game, that's my expectation for the commitment of showing up on this podcast.
There we go.
We'll put it in the schedule right away.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys, and take care.